Hi everybody, welcome to the Atlanta Office 365 user group. My name is Dan Ray and I will be presenting on Office 365 and how that works on a Mac. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. I am a Microsoft certified trainer. I've been so for the last 16 years or so, and I've been a Mac user since actually joining Microsoft in 2005. I purchased my first MacBook at Microsoft and have been using them ever since. Here is my LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook connection information if you'd like to reach out to me. If you have questions after today's session, feel free to ping me and I will get back to you as soon as I can. As I mentioned, I spent some time as a Microsoft full-time employee, and my first MacBook Pro was purchased after my first bonus at Microsoft. I thought about what kind of computer would Microsoft probably not purchase for me or give me the option to get as a work computer, and a MacBook Pro at the time seemed like the logical device that I might not see as a Microsoft full-time employee, at least at the time. The version that I got came with Tiger, and it was an ATI graphics card. It had half a gigabyte of RAM, and I want to say maybe a 200 gigabyte hard drive. I don't even remember the hard drive size. But again, it shipped with Tiger. It was an Intel-based computer. Since then, Leopard came out, Snow Leopard, Lion, and Mountain Lion. And then Mac changed, or Apple changed their naming convention to a different paradigm from large cats. Mavericks came out, that was 10.9. Yosemite followed on, El Capitan, and then Sierra is the latest version. And again, here's a link to where I got that release history. Most of it was from memory, but I needed a couple reminders about the order. And similar to how the Mac OS X versions have evolved, Office for Mac has also evolved over that time. The first version of Microsoft Office for Mac that I installed on that Intel-based system was Office 2004, and it was actually an update to support the Intel-based Macs, which were introduced in 2005. After that, Office was typically released for the PC, and then the next year released for the Mac. So I upgraded my Office 2004 installs to 2008 once it was released. Similar in 2011, there was a Microsoft Office 2011 version for Mac. Lync was introduced at some point, so I had MSN Messenger and the equivalent Office Communicator on previous versions of the Microsoft Office for Mac versions. And I believe at one point it was actually a combined client, so you could use it for both the MSN Messenger or the personal instant messaging, as well as Office Communicator or the work business communication. Lync was actually a separate install, and you'll see some of that in my actual screenshots because I had Lync and Office 2011 and Outlook specifically installed on one of the virtual machines that I was doing some of my demos and screen captures from. And then Microsoft released OneNote for the Mac in 2014, as well as a preview of Outlook 2016 prior to releasing all of Office for Mac 2016 versions. And again, I got this information from Wikipedia. The Office 2016 version for Mac actually was generally available before the PC version went to general availability. And again, this is a first time in a pretty big dramatic shift from what you can see in Office following the PC version by about a year. So as we dive in, we'll just level set on some Mac versus PC basics for anybody that hasn't needed one. There's a number of ways to run Office for Mac. Probably the first and maybe the easiest to think about is that you need to have a Mac computer, a MacBook, a iMac, or a Mac Mini. Some type of Mac computer is required to actually run the Mac OS. You may need to spend some time just getting comfortable with what's different, the dock concept and the menus from the top and the Finder, which is their version of Explorer, and your file system and your navigation. And you'll need to decide how you want to interact with Windows. I'll share a couple of the different ways that I did that over the time that I've used a Mac for the last 10 years. The first thing that I installed and got familiar with was Boot Camp. And Boot Camp was again introduced and supported by Apple. And it's the ability to reboot a MacBook, an iMac, a Mac computer, and have a partition that is formatted and set up with Microsoft Windows in a particular version. And then during the reboot process, you can decide which operating system, the Mac OS X or Windows, boots by default. But you can actually change or modify that to boot the alternative operating system. So for instance, if I'm using Windows on my MacBook, as I did in the early days as a primary, and I wanted to dabble or do something on the Mac side, I'd just hold down the Option key during a reboot, and I would be presented with, do you want to boot Windows, which is the default, or the Mac OS? Over time, and in these subsequent updates, the Apple Boot Camp support would introduce new support for Microsoft OSs as they came out. So it started for me with Windows Vista. When Windows 7 went into betas, there was the ability to either upgrade from Vista to Windows 7 and keep pretty good support for the hardware. And then Boot Camp actually would go through a beta or an upgrade to support Windows 7. After Windows 7, it supported Windows 8, 8.1, and now it supports Windows 10. However, what I found was primarily related to the reboots and the file system that you had to use with Boot Camp. I had to, if I had, let's say one of my systems had a 500 gig hard drive, I had to decide pretty early whether I wanted to divide that into two 250 gigabyte partitions, one for the Mac OS and one for Windows, or if I wanted to give a little more to Windows or a little more to the Mac OS. You have to make all those decisions ahead of time. And then again, you have to reboot to move into maybe a feature or something you want to check out from one OS or the other. Probably a year or two into my learning about the Mac operating system, the OS X versions, I started working with the primary versions of virtualization that are available under the Mac OS X platform. And these are Parallels. And again, there's a link in the PowerPoint, as well as VMware Fusion. VMware Fusion I used in a trial, and just based on my testing and what I wanted to do at the time, I chose Parallels. I've also done some brief work with VirtualBox. And again, VirtualBox is free, so it is an option that you can just test for yourself. And doing a little additional internet research for this presentation, I found 3 other choices, and I have caveated all 3 of these that I have not tested or tried out any of these products. There is a wine product that I've got the URL for, Crossover, which also lets you do some virtualization from within the Mac OS X version, as well as Veer2. And again, my caution to you is there's links to them, but I have not, as of yet, had a chance to test any of these 3. I will in the coming weeks and post something probably to Twitter as well as LinkedIn and what I find with these, my viewpoint. Okay, so let's get started with Office for Mac. The very first lesson that you're going to learn is that Office 365's version of the Mac OS X that you download does not support Mavericks. So if you're on version 10.9 or earlier of the Mac OS X versions, you're going to have to upgrade to 10.10, which is Yosemite or higher, to install it. So on this virtual machine, you can see that I've been given the message I cannot install the Office 2016 for Mac because I'm not on a supported version of the Mac OS version, the OS for Mac. You can see in my dock here that I do have Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and Outlook from the Office 2011 installed on that system. And I actually installed it on all the virtual machines, many of which you'll see screenshots of here. If you're on Yosemite 10.10 or a newer version of the Mac OS X, you're going to be able to install Office 365. You can actually install this fresh on a virtual machine, or you can install it side by side with Office 2010 or 2011, excuse me. You can see here again that I have the Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and Outlook icons from 2011, and I'm actually installing 2016 essentially side by side with those programs. Once you've installed and used Office 2011, here's a screenshot on one of those virtual machines. I've got Link up and running, and I've got the familiar status. In this case, I'm available or green. And within the Outlook 2011, I have my mail, calendar, contacts, tasks, and notes, and a ability to work with my inbox and do the things that I would need to do within Outlook. So here you can see the Office 2016 and specifically Skype for Business, which is a separate install, and Outlook 2016 on the right. Outlook 2016 for Mac looks very similar to the PC version. So I can see my inbox, I can reply to emails, I have my calendar, my contacts, and all of those within the same interface, which is a pretty big difference between the built-in mail and calendaring contacts functions on the Mac. Those are all separate applications native to the Mac. So in this case, I can have Outlook open and have, just like on the PC, all of those different capabilities from the one program that's open. Skype to the left of this screenshot shows me my calendar of meetings, my chats with other people, and my contacts, and is very easy to use. Here's where I actually go to get the install for Office for Mac. If I don't already have it downloaded, I log into my portal.office365.com. And as part of that, in the upper right-hand corner, you can see I have a choice to install Office 2016. That auto-detects the version of the operating system that you're running. And again, if I'm running from a Mac computer, it downloads about a 1.6 gigabyte file. And that file is what I use to install Office 2016. The other installs up in the upper right is where I would get the Skype for Business client, or I could download Link or other versions for the Mac from there. There's also the concept of the activated installs. So activation is very similar to the PC platform, and from within my portal, I can actually control the 5 installs. And again, it can be a mix of Mac computers and PCs. And I can control that right from here. In this case, in the screenshot, you can see I have an iMac and 2 MacBook Pros with different versions of the Mac OS on those computers. So I see all of that detail within the activated installations. Once downloaded, that Office 2016 installer package is something that I find in the downloads folder by default. I double click on, and I'm running through the install for Office 2016. It's pretty straightforward. You click continue, you agree to the license. After you agree to the license, you're going to see information about where it's installed. By default, it's installed on the hard disk that is present in your Mac computer. You can change the location, however, if you have multiple partitions or multiple hard disks. Again, if anything is open that needs to be closed, you are prompted for it. In this case, I had PowerPoint running, and you can actually download the individual application installs if you choose. So in this case, I had PowerPoint installed by itself, and now I'm running the rest of the Office 2016 versions. You can also do things like that. You're prompted, similar to user account control in Windows, for your actual user account's password on a Mac when you're doing almost any type of install. So this would go for Chrome, Office, Adobe, other types of installs that I've done on a Mac. I am prompted for that user account's password at the time that it elevates to make those changes to the computer. And then it copies the files local. You're finished with the install. At the very end, you're actually asked if you want to get rid of the installer package that you downloaded from the internet. It's about 1.6 again gig. So unless you don't have a problem saving that much or having that much space used on your system, or you expect maybe to install it on another system or on virtual machines, I would suggest moving it to the trash and emptying that, regaining that space. Here is an example of what happens after you've installed Office 2016 for the Mac. One of the things that's different between 2011 and 2016 on a Mac is 2016 does not, by default, put anything or modify your dock. So you can see the dock at the very bottom of the screenshot has the Finder, or the kind of smiley face to the far left. It has Safari, which is the built-in browser, the applications, the settings on my Mac, messages, photos, my downloads folder after the vertical bar separating the two areas, parallels, and then I think a minimized browser and my trash, or my trash can. However, if you have Finder, or the actual Explorer equivalent on a Mac open, or if you have that selected as the program that has focus with the Command tab, you can actually hit the Command Shift A. And what that does is brings up your applications in a Finder window. And this is where you would find PowerPoint, Outlook, OneNote, Excel, and Word installed. So if you're looking for those, Command Tab till Finder is the application, and then Command Shift A to bring up this window. There's other ways to do it. There's something called Launchpad, which looks like an iPad's version of the icons, and Launchpad is a default in the dock. I just removed it from my dock. Launchpad would be another way to get to these application icons. And then the Mac actually has the concept of applications running, appearing in the dock automatically, and then applications that you choose to have permanently available in the dock, almost like a taskbar pin in Windows 10 or Windows 8 and above, where you could have frequently used programs pinned to your taskbar for quick access. So in this case, I have actually pinned Skype, Outlook, and PowerPoint to my dock. And it's pretty easy to do. The other thing that this slide points out is Skype for Business, when you install it, does modify and put itself in the dock by default. so you don't have to worry about how to find Skype once it's installed. It's pretty straightforward being in the dock. In this screenshot, I'm showing how to open OneNote on the Mac. In this screenshot, you can see that I've got OneNote open and it's also in the dock because it's running. If I wanted to keep it permanently in the dock, I could right click, which on a Mac is 2 fingers on your trackpad, on the in the dock, and one of my options would be to pin that so that it's there permanently in the dock. When you first run a program, in this case Microsoft Word, you will probably see a security dialog like this, where it's asking you if it's okay to put confidential information into the keychain. The keychain is the concept of keeping all of your password and secrets associated with applications and trust on a Mac. So in this case, I can decide to always allow to run the application or allow it this one time. Same thing here, the keychain request from Excel being run the first time, and typically I just allow these if they're trusted applications. It's the idea of security and applications maybe that aren't verified, and being able to sandbox or to control what those applications have access to by default. In any of the Office 2016 applications on Mac, the first time you launch them, you would actually see a what's new in that program. So in this screenshot, you can see that I've launched Excel, so it shows up in my dock, and it doesn't look like it's permanently assigned to my dock at this point, but because the program is running, I see the X in my dock along with the P for PowerPoint to the far right. And the first time in, I get kind of an introduction to the changes that are in that program. So for Excel, I see that it's cloud connected in this version and that it is still Office, but designed and taking into account a Mac. And the next few screenshots introduce you to some of what Excel looks like specifically on the Mac. Again, the first time you launch these applications, the other concept of activation is part of what will happen. So in this case, my Office install asks me about my Office 365 credentials and updates my activation. Assuming I have additional registrations, the activation works and I'm off and running using Excel. If for any reason the activation has a problem, I would again go to my portal for Office 365, deactivate one of my installs, either on another Mac, maybe I've re-imaged it, or on a PC that I'm no longer using as part of my 5 installs. And then I would come back, and the next screenshot, which shows you the backstage view, would actually have activation as one of the choices if activation for whatever reason failed, internet connectivity or the amount of installs that I have. Here is that backstage view. And the nice thing again about the backstage is it's pretty consistent between PC and Mac, at least for some of the basics. So again, I am introduced immediately to the idea of templates for Excel, and I can choose a blank workbook or a particular template for the application that I'm running. I have a recent, so that would understand what I've opened recently, either locally or from cloud, OneDrive for Business, for instance. I have shared if files have been shared with me, and I have an open option, which would just put me into the Finder window to find my spreadsheet locally on my computer. I chose Excel for the Mac to show you some screenshots within the programs, just because I know Leandra is an Excel whiz, and I figured some of the combinations and tips and tricks that are similar between Mac and PC might be of interest to her. As you can see here in a blank workbook, The workbook gets a name of workbook 1. The next one that you open would get workbook 2, workbook 3, etc. And I have the same capabilities of entering either input, looking at autocomplete, different types of navigation and tricks that you may have learned in Excel work pretty much the same on a Mac as they do on a PC. One of the big differences, however, is the idea of a Mac always having a menu at the very top of the screen that the application is running. So in this example, I've got Excel, and so I still have the concept of the ribbons, but besides that, I also have a very familiar and consistent file edit, insert, window type menuing system at the very top. And this would again be the same types of organization for programs like Safari or the Finder, as well as applications like Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, any of the Office applications. So really, depending on how you're comfortable with the mouse and the input, you could use, again, the ribbons, where maybe you're looking for formulas, or you could use these drop-down menus to find maybe inserting a formula as an example. The next stop on our brief tour of Excel is the Formulas tab. And again, pretty consistent from a usability perspective, PC versus Mac. So if I were looking for a particular category of formula, I could see that. If I get into a formula that maybe I'm not as familiar with, I'm using COUNTIF or a different type of formula, I would still get the kind of walkthrough and the guidance of using that formula and what it's looking for arguments, similar to on a PC. Skype, as I mentioned, is actually a separate download. And if you choose to, for whatever reason, maybe the only programs I need to use on a particular Mac are Excel, and I want to use my email, or Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and Skype for Business are the things I'm going to use. I can actually download each of the Office applications separate as well, and those are in the notes at the end of this PowerPoint deck. In this case, though, I've downloaded Skype and I want to install it. So it's a separate package, fairly small. And again, when I launch the installer, it will tell me if I have any applications that need to be closed. One of the things Skype is good at doing as an installer is reminding you to close your browsers so that any plugins or modifications can be made to those programs. So the Mac OS is pretty good about telling you if those conflicting programs are running and either giving you the option of closing them, installing the program later, or closing the programs for you. Again, a quick screenshot showing that Skype is put in the dock by default. So once you've installed Skype for Business, it is placed on the dock for you. In this case, to the far right. And again, you can move it around similar to a PC with a taskbar by clicking and holding down the button on a trackpad or a mouse, and then just rearranging it. If I want Skype over to the left, I just hold down the mouse button or click on the trackpad, and then I drag while holding down. Here's your tip or trick on how to keep something permanently on the taskbar, or the dock, on the Mac. You right click, which is 2 buttons on the trackpad, or if you have a traditional PC mouse with a right mouse button, you can hit that right mouse button, go up to Options, and then Keep in Dock. The other thing that the Office for Mac applications all have in common is the concept of updates. Microsoft Auto Update runs on the Mac version, and similar to the PC, the Mac updates are happening about once a month. So if I go to the Help pull-down menu and check for updates, that's where I would see the updates that might be available. And again, if I've downloaded and installed the Office 365 or 2016 versions for Mac, I may actually have updates already available. In this case, I see the Microsoft Auto update, and by default, I would see this suggest, hey, should I go check for updates on a periodic basis? And this is also on a Mac where you decide if you want to enroll in the Office Insider program, fast or slow. So the Microsoft Auto Update is available to any of the Office applications, 2016 versions for Mac. And this is also where you decide to join the Office Insiders program and then how often you want the updates. This is another reason that I'm using virtualization on my Mac. It's a perfect example of something that I might not want to change on my actual computer, but I might want to take a look at the Office Insider Fast Ring within a virtual machine running a particular version of the Mac OS that does not affect the version that's installed on the physical Mac computer. Just the same concepts that you would have for virtualizing the Microsoft operating systems on a Microsoft computer, and those same programs that you can virtualize Windows on, Parallels, VMware, VirtualBox, at least Parallels and VMware both now support virtualizing the Mac OS from within the Mac OS. So for instance, I'm running Sierra, the latest version of the Mac OS, and it's 10.12. If for whatever reason I wanted to do some testing, as I did at the very beginning of this PowerPoint, on what happens if I try to install on Mavericks, Office 365, I can download the install for Mavericks, fire up a virtual machine, and install Mavericks into that virtually, just like I would have had to in the past on a physical computer. Okay, let's move into some specifics about Lync versus Skype. In this case, I have a screenshot of a virtual Mac computer operating system and the notification that I would get from Lync from an incoming message. You'll notice that it's towards the bottom right, and it indicates who it's from and allows me to define whether I'm replying to it, ignoring the message, etc. If I'm using the Skype for Business app, however, you would see those notifications to the upper right-hand side. In this case, I see that Sam Ray is sending me a text, and I would have the opportunity to decide if I'm responding to that immediately or pretty quickly that just goes away and dismisses itself to the right. Here is again the example of the Lync windows. You can see here to the left that I have Sam logged in to a Lync session. If I click on his available for the green, I can change his display. Maybe he's going out or he's presenting. I can set it to do not disturb, appear away, whatever I want to do. And to the right hand side, I have a chat that Sam and I had back and forth this morning. Similar to the Lync experience, the Skype experience just changes the look and feel of the interaction. So both Sam's windows and screenshots that were shown through the Lync client and my screenshots that are shown through the Skype for Business client, the back end to this is Office 365 and Skype for Business. So again, if that back end were Lync, you'd be able to use either Skype for Business on newer installs or systems where somebody's running Skype. And if they're running Lync, they would have the Lync look and feel as I've highlighted here. Also, if you have Outlook 2016 installed, as well as Skype for Business, you would get the interaction when you're setting up a meeting to add Skype information to that. So in this screenshot, you can see that I've switched over to my calendar view. And a little quick tip or trick about that, you can actually switch between these by hitting the Command key and 2 or Command key 1 on a Mac to switch from your inbox, Command key 1, and Command key 2 would switch to your calendar view. So you can either click on those icons in the lower left-hand corner for inbox, calendar, contacts, or you can use the Command key and the appropriate number left to right. So for instance, to get to my contacts, the little people icon in the middle, I would hit Command 3. Here you can see that I've popped up the details for the calendar appointment that I'm scheduling for noon, and I can add a subject and a location, the body of the message. On a Mac, if you are attaching something to the calendar invite, one thing that took me a few minutes to figure out was there is not the concept on the ribbon of a attachment. The easiest way I've found is drag and drop. So I could open a Finder window if I wanted to include a Word document or some type of agenda, picture, something else, and I can just drag and drop it on the white space below in the calendar appointment, and it's that easy to attach. But it took me a little bit, since I'm used to seeing attach as an option on the ribbon. So in this case, I want to invite Sam to the meeting. So I invite him, and by adding him as a recipient of this meeting, I also then have the option to create an online meeting, which would add the Skype dial-in and information about connecting to the meeting. This is how I actually turn just a calendar appointment into an invitation to somebody else and eventually into an online meeting. Now that I've selected online meeting, this is where I get the join online meeting information, and then again I have the ability to update people with the details, add other attendees to the meeting either at this point or later, and then send those updates to all attendees. This is the experience of joining a meeting from the Outlook Skype experience. So if I have Outlook 2016, I click on Join Meeting. That launches the browser that's default, and that browser would ask me, do I want to connect with Skype for Business as an application to join the meeting. If I'm on the Outlook 2011 link experience, you'll see at the very bottom of the screen, I get the calendar appointment reminder. In 15 minutes, I've got an online meeting. I can click Join Online there. I could go back to my calendar to choose to join. Typically, the first time you install this, you get the option to trust the plugin from the browser. So at the very top, I would click on Trust. And then within the middle of the page, I would say, I want to open this link in Skype or in this case in Microsoft Link, because that's what I have installed. Again, screenshot of the link experience within a virtual machine. Sam and Dan have joined this. Sam is on the Office 2011 with link experience. So I see the information about the dial-ins, my mute, my video, and my sharing capabilities. Here's what the Skype experience looks like, very similar to what it would look like on a PC or even the web version. I get a little bit more of a full screen tailored experience. In the upper right, I have the ability to turn on and off the IM messaging back and forth with participants, the participant list, to see that it's just Sam and me, in this case in the meeting. and then the phone dial pad if I were trying to dial other people. The mute, sharing, and video are also right in the middle at the bottom of the Skype experience. Then again, here is what the sharing experience looks like through Skype for Business. I actually used Sam's virtual machine using Link, shared his desktop, and then opened a Finder window with, again, the Command-Shift-A shortcut, and then double-clicked on PowerPoint 2011, which is launching in the shared experience. When you install Office 2016, if you already have Outlook 2011 on that system and you're using it, Outlook 2016, instead of asking you what type of email account do you want to connect to, will actually offer to import that information for you. So as an example, in this case, I've taken Sam's computer, installed side by side with Outlook 2011, the Outlook 2016 program, as well as the rest of Office. And when I launch Outlook 2016, it automatically identifies the fact that Outlook 2011 was set up with a Office 365 account, and it offers to import that information for me. Here's some bonus information. I have Launchpad in this screenshot on my dock. It looks like a little rocket ship, and again, it's there by default. I normally remove it because I'm not a big user of it. But Launchpad looks and kind of behaves like the iPad app experience. You actually click into it to have a full screen application view. And once you launch it, this is what Launchpad looks like. You can either launch it again from your dock, or you can use your fingers together on a gesture on a trackpad on a Apple Mac, and you can bring your fingers together on the trackpad, and that also launches Launchpad. So it's a quick gesture to bring up these applications. And again, I don't know if we've shown the drag to dock, so I have an example of dragging the Office applications to the dock. In this case, we can also play the game of spelling things in the dock. I'm dragging Skype for Business from the applications view in Finder, which again I got to by hitting the Command-Shift-A keys together, and then holding down and dragging Skype for Business till it's in the dock area. Anywhere to the left of the vertical line are for applications to be docked. Next, I take Outlook, Microsoft Outlook, and I drag that again to the dock. I'm from Chicago, so guess what I'm trying to spell? That's right, if we take the Excel icon and we drag that down to the dock, it's one of Chicago's baseball teams, the Chicago White Sox. I also included screenshots of the applications, just in case you haven't seen the Mac versions of these apps. Here I have a screenshot of OneNote. And again, OneNote, because it's running, is now in the dock. In this case, I have my dock hidden, so you can also, just like with the taskbar in Windows, define whether the dock is permanently at the bottom or whether it hides when not in use. So the reason you don't see the dock at the bottom of the screen is because I have it auto hiding when I'm not mousing to the very bottom of the screen to reveal the applications that are running or the icons for them. Here we have Word on the Mac, and you can see that I can work with these in Windows or I can actually make the applications full screen. And the next thing we'll show you is what the full screen experience, especially with something new in Outlook, looks like on the Mac. If I use the green item at the upper left of the window, the red is to close a window, the yellow minimizes, and the green maximizes. This is what the full screen experience for Outlook looks like. And they call this feature on the Mac a focused inbox. So it takes away the top menu, it suppresses the dock whether you have it hidden or not, and it puts you into your inbox so that you can really manage your tasks, your calendar, your messages that have come in. And one of the nice features in this focused inbox experience is if you double click on an email, maybe to work on it or to read the entire email, you get a focused inbox experience even with an email front and center. Here I've clicked on the invite from Leandra, and you can see that the Office 365 Loves Mac OS invite is in the middle of my screen. I can scroll, I can respond, whatever I need to do to that email. But if I minimize this with the yellow in the upper left-hand corner, I can then pick something else from my inbox. And depending on your screen resolution, you can have up to 2 emails or 2 items on the screen at one time. So here you can see that I have 2 messages full screen, and I can manipulate between them. If I were trying to cut and paste information, maybe into an email I was composing or an email that I'm referencing, it's very easy for me to put those side by side to cut and paste or to compare something between them. If I have more than 2 emails and I use the yellow item in the upper left-hand corner of each window to minimize them, I would see the different items, messages at the bottom of the screen. I'll show that next. Here you can see that I have 1 email open, but I have a canceled and an Office 365 Loves Mac OS email at the bottom. And again, I could either switch between these depending on screen resolution, or I could put up to 2 of these side by side to work with them. Finally, we'll talk about some different ways on the Mac that allow you to move between open windows of a particular program. And this is a feature that I really, really enjoy. Here you can see the on-screen keyboard and the fact that I have a number of windows open in Outlook. Now I don't have it in the focused inbox or the full screen experience. So the messages may be kind of hiding behind each other and the inbox is hiding behind the message, depending on the sizes. But what you can see with the red indicators is the command, which looks like kind of infinite loops at the bottom left of the spacebar, where the Alt key would be on a PC. If I hit that and the tilde, which is right above the Tab key, it actually, instead of moving between different applications that I have running, like Outlook and PowerPoint and OneNote and Word, the command tilde moves between the open windows of a particular application. So in this case, I'm in Outlook. This would move me to my different messages and eventually back to my inbox very quickly and easily. And it's really nice because this is something that I'm not aware of on Windows. Windows has the concept, and Mac as well, of the Command key and Tab to move between applications. So if I had Safari open, Outlook, PowerPoint, OneNote, Word, and Excel, Command Tab moves me to Safari. Command Tab again moves me to Outlook. Command Tab again, PowerPoint, etc. The Command key, or that infinite loop item that's highlighted in red, and tilde, however, moves me between open windows of the same application. So if I had 4 Safari windows open and I Command Tab to Safari, Command tilde allows me to cycle through those 4 open windows in Safari. Same thing with PowerPoint. If I had 3 PowerPoints open, Command tilde or the hyphen key right above the tab allows me to move between those different PowerPoint presentations. Really cool feature. And then this slide explains some of the different resources that are available. The first link takes you to the portal. And again, that's where we went to install Office 365. If you don't have it and would like to put it on a Mac, take your Mac and your favorite browser on that platform. Go in that browser to portal.office365.com. The second link is the Office for Mac link for Skype installs. And the third link, as well as fourth, are some of the guidance for admins. If you're installing Office on Macs, this helps you with information on best practices, how to do this multiple times, how to avoid a lot of end user input. That type of information is contained in those 2 links. Again, if you're interested in this information about differences between the Windows version of Office 2016, the Mac version, and maybe the iPad version, the first link on this page is going to be of interest to you. It's a blog post by Parallels from earlier in 2016, about a year and a couple months ago, and it defines the differences between Microsoft Office versions, Mac versus Windows versus iPad. The second link on this page just has some information about Microsoft Office for Mac specifically in the latest version. The third link, I believe, is a link you would find at the bottom of the second page and just gives you the quick start guides. So if you're new to Mac, or you have users that are new to Macs or new to Office 2016 on those Macs, these are the printable guides that you can use for those users to get them up to speed. And then the fourth link on this page is the blogs specific to Office for Mac. So if you're looking for new features that again are coming out for the Mac all the time, that's an easy place to get those tips and tricks and keep up to date on what's coming or what's there already for Office for Mac. Again, I mentioned that a couple times that there are separate installs. If for whatever reason you needed, maybe for attorneys, you needed Word for Mac and they need email, but they don't really have use for Excel, or an accounting department really needs Excel, but you haven't moved them to the more current version of Outlook. You don't want to have to deal with support or potential other things that are happening with that, but they really need Excel. You can go to macadmins.software, and this will give you the standalone installers. So you can just get Excel 2016 or Word 2016, the different applications separately. The second link on this is actually a command line to install, in this case, the PowerPoint 2016 installer without the continue, agree, the dialog boxes that we saw in this PowerPoint presentation. So if you need to automate this still prompts for the user's password, but there is no additional prompting. And again, the article, the third bullet point is where you would get that, where I got this information about using a command line to silence the install, and would also talk about how to feed in a password if you wanted to suppress the password so you don't have to type it in or have the user type it in. Again, thanks very much for attending this presentation on Office for Mac. I appreciate the time, and at this point I'll turn things back over to Leandra.